Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. You can learn a lot about someone by playing tennis with them. I found that generally guys who are gentlemen on the tennis court are also gentlemen in their lives off the court. Conversely, I watched a guy display some of the worst integrity I've ever seen while playing with his best friend. Later, I was not surprised when this guy abandoned his family and ran off with another man's wife. And then there's Brad Harrison. Brad is a big guy. In fact, he played football at UC San Diego until he blew out his knee. After an orthopedic surgeon repaired it, Brad switched to tennis where he played like a football player, making powerful serves and shooting from the baseline. But I could beat him. I liked to go up to the net and put pressure on him. Typically, he would hit it too high and the ball would bounce into the side fence. Let's just say that I provoked him. Let's say I gave him the benefit of the doubt when he hit. As a result, Brad always wanted to play with me. He just hated losing to the little guy. Actually, I'm not small. In fact, I'm 6 feet tall, but quite thin and wiry, which makes me small compared to Brad, who is 3 inches taller and 75 pounds heavier than me. It's no surprise that I don't really want to play with Brad, but it's hard to avoid him because we both live in the Sunset Cliffs area of San Diego. Since San Diego is such a big tennis town, our section was built around a clubhouse with a pool and multiple tennis courts. With so many people playing on teams in the local tennis leagues, it's pretty hard to avoid someone like Brad. But the good news was that I also got to play with a lot of really good people like my mixed doubles partner Samantha Clark. I met Samantha through my wife Emily. Emily is a Pilates instructor and many people who live in Sunset Cliffs take classes at her studio, including Samantha. Unfortunately for me, Emily doesn't like tennis, but when she heard that Samantha was looking for a partner, she introduced me to her, and Samantha and I have been playing together for about a year. The club we were playing at today was in Poway, so I suggested that Samantha come with me to save gas. With traffic getting heavy on Saturday afternoons, we budgeted 30 minutes to get there. As she walked out the front door, I wondered again why Samantha was still single. This was partly due to the fact that she had lost her husband in a car accident 3 years earlier. After a long period of mourning, one of the ways she dealt with her grief was to join Emily's Pilates class. Another option was to return to tennis, which she had played in high school. The result of all this physical activity was a fit, slender, dark-haired woman in her early 30s. I expected a woman as beautiful as Samantha to attract suitors like flies to honey, but she kept telling Emily that she just hadn't found the right man for herself. "Hey, Samantha." I greeted her as she opened my car door. "Are you ready to beat them today?" She grinned at me. "I bet Jason. I've been waiting for a rematch with them for a long time." As I was getting onto Highway 163, we were talking about our strategy for the match, but I was interrupted by my cell phone ringing. "Hello? Robert, are you kidding me? No, everything is fine here." "Damn okay, we'll reschedule." Samantha looked at me questioningly as I took the next exit and headed home. "It was our opponent," I told her. "He said that it had just rained and it was impossible to play on the courts. San Diego is known for localized downpours that can drench one area of the city, while the sun is shining brightly just a few miles away." Samantha was clearly disappointed. "Damn it, I really wanted to play today." "Look," I said, "why don't we go back to the club? We can practice and maybe there will be someone there who wants to play." Arriving at the main entrance to Sunset Cliffs, I turned onto the road leading to my house. "I want to stop for a minute and pick up my check for this quarter's club dues," I said to Samantha. "I'll be there in a minute." I parked at the curb and rushed to the front door. Last night I wrote out a check and left it on my dresser so I knew where to find it. But as I walked down the hallway, I heard sounds coming from the master bedroom. Sounds I shouldn't have heard. "Oh, please do it again, yes, like that." I heard Emily's voice. "What the hell?" I tiptoed along the corridor and looked in the door. Emily lay on the bed, and above her was a man who was with her intimately. She made a sound and gasped. I felt like I was in a car accident. I was stunned. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Everything suddenly changed, and I couldn't understand what was happening. "No, this can't be true," I thought, recognizing the figure of Brad Harrison. He took her and she began to encourage him with sounds. I backed away from the door as if I had been punched. It was unbearable. My first instinct was to rush into the room and attack him, but what good is that? I asked myself in despair. She already cheated on me. Fighting him won't change that. Besides, even if I landed the first blow, he's much bigger than me and could still beat me badly. But I couldn't bear to stay and watch. As I stood there, I suddenly remembered that Samantha was waiting in the car. I couldn't let her see me like this. Not until I figured out what to do. I need to get her home first, then I'll come back and deal with this properly, I thought. I found myself walking back down the hallway in a daze and out of house. I felt like I might throw up at any second. I looked up and saw Samantha looking at me through the car window. A moment later, I climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. I don't know what I looked like, but apparently I didn't look too good. "Are you okay, Jason?" Samantha asked, worriedly looking at me. I couldn't speak. I grabbed the steering wheel as tightly as I could, steering the car toward Samantha's house. When I stopped, I parked the car and said without looking at her, "Sorry, Samantha, but I can't play with you today." "What happened, Jason? What happened?" she asked with growing concern. When I didn't answer, she reached over, turned off the ignition, then took out the keys and kept them as she walked out into my door. I turned to her. "I have to go, Samantha. Please give me back my keys." "No," she said firmly, "not until you tell me what happened." When I didn't say anything, she opened the car door and pulled my hand. "You're not going anywhere until you come inside and tell me what's going on." Like a robot, I got out of the car and let her take me to her house. She disappeared for a second and returned with a glass of ice water. I automatically sipped it while she looked at me. When I put the glass down, she took my hand and squeezed it in hers. "Tell me, Jason, what happened?" There suddenly all my resistance disappeared and I leaned back against her sofa. I tried to speak, but my throat suddenly tightened again, so I took another sip of water. "Emily and Brad were there," I said in a tense tone. She looked at me blankly. "Come on," she said. "They were there together in our bedroom, they were." My voice trailed off. She gasped, "No, this can't be true. Emily would never do that." The image of the two of them came back to me with full force and I felt a tear run down my face. "I thought so too." I choked as the pain in my throat intensified. "Could it be something else, Jason? Could you be mistaken?" she asked. I knew she was trying to help, but that didn't stop me from getting angry. When I looked inside, she was lying on her back and Brad was with her intimately. When he moved, she encouraged him with sounds. "So you're telling me, Samantha, that I'm wrong?" She flinched at my angry sarcasm. "I'm so sorry, Jason. I didn't doubt you, I just hoped there might be some other explanation." Even more pain shot through me. "And of all people, Brad Harrison," I said angrily. "How could she let that big baboon get close to her?" "I think that explains why Brad started taking Pilates lessons from Emily," Samantha mused out loud. "Did he take lessons from her?" I shouted. She never told me about this. My anger was still seeping out of me. "Thank you very much for the warning," I said bitterly. Now Samantha was hurting. "It's not my fault," she said, her voice breaking. "I know," I said, my anger suddenly deflating. "I'm sorry. I'm not angry at you. I don't know what I'm feeling." She got up from the couch and sat next to me, then put her arms around me. I leaned against her shoulder. "What am I going to do?" I whispered. We stayed there until I felt strong enough to go back and face them. Emily was coming out of the bedroom fully dressed while Brad was putting on his shirt. "I got a call about the rain right after we left," I said quietly. She blinked, but her expression didn't change. "I came back into the house," I told her, my heart quickening, "and I saw you and Brad." Of the many scenarios I had come up with, Emily's reaction was the most unpredictable. "I'm sorry you had to see this," she said calmly. "Is that all you have to say?" I asked incredulously. "You're cheating on me and your only regret is that I witnessed it? Aren't you even going to say that you regret being with him? How long has this been going on? Don't you have any explanation?" She crossed her arms and sighed. "Sit down, Jason," she said, pointing to the dining room table. "I prefer to stand," I said angrily. "As you wish," she said, and sat down on a chair. I stood there stunned by her complete lack of reaction. "Look, Jason, we were going to tell you soon anyway, but I think this will just speed up the schedule a little. I'm leaving you. Brad and I love each other, and I'm going to move in with him. We will get married as soon as the divorce is final." I decided to sit down. I didn't want to risk falling. Before I could think of anything to say, she jumped up and said, "Wait here," and then disappeared back into our bedroom. A few moments later, she returned, clutching a sheath of papers. She handed them to me across the table. "It shouldn't be too bad for you," she said. "I don't even want any alimony from you. I took all the money out of our savings account, but it's only fair because I'm leaving you the house. This offer is a lot better than what you'll get if we go to court, but I'll take it if you sign the papers and let us all get on with our lives." I looked at the stack of papers. It was a petition for divorce. "Have you already been to a lawyer?" I asked, surprised. "What about our marriage? What happened to the last 10 years we spent together?" "I'm so sorry, Jason. It wasn't something I planned, it just happened," she said. "Just happened?" I shouted. "Accept this? Accept that my loving wife had an affair with Brad Harrison in our own bed? Accept that our marriage ended this way? Aren't you even going to say that you regret being with him? How long has this been going on? Don't you have any explanation?" She stood up. "I'm disappointed, Jason. I was hoping for a more mature reaction from you." She turned and went back to the bedroom. I sat at the table looking at the divorce petition in front of me, trying to understand what was happening. If anyone had asked me that morning, I would have told them that I loved my wife and that we had a strong marriage. This afternoon, I found out that she is leaving me for another man. Just cognitive dissonance. In the silence, I heard the beep of a mobile phone and then fragments of conversation. "He saw us? About as you expected. That would be good." When she returned, she was fully dressed and carrying an overnight bag and a makeup kit. "Now that you've put the question bluntly, I'm not going to stay here overnight. Brad will come for me. We'll come back on Monday when you're at work and pick up the rest of my things." "So you're leaving like this? That's how it should be?" she said. "Okay," I said bitterly. "What should I tell our friends?" She sighed. "Look, Jason, Brad and I didn't do anything wrong, and we're not going to hide like criminals. We're going to continue to have an active social life. In fact, we'll probably go to the club event next weekend. You won't have to explain anything to anyone because they'll find out anyway." At that moment, a beep sounded from outside. "Brad has arrived," she said. "I'm leaving." As she closed the door, she turned around and looked at me. "Just sign the papers, Jason. The sooner you do this, the better it will be for all of us." After that, she left. I don't know how long I sat there. Emotions flew through me like the carriages of a passing train. One minute I was seething with anger, and the next I was remembering happy times and filled with sadness. I told myself that I treated her like a queen, then thought, what did I do to make her leave? I'm better off without her, I repeated until loneliness overwhelmed me. My cell phone ringing startled me, and I quickly answered. Subconsciously, I think I was hoping to hear Emily's voice, but it was Samantha. "How are you, Jason?" she asked. "Not very good," I replied. "She left me." "I heard," she said. "You heard?" I was surprised. "Where? How?" "I'm very sorry, Jason," she said sadly. "Brad was bragging about it at the club." "Oh crap," I thought. "It has already begun." On Sunday, I called the captain of our men's team. There was no way I was going to make it. "Sorry, Joe," I told him. "You'll have to cut me from the lineup today. I have some personal issues that need to be sorted out." "Yes, I heard," he said sympathetically. "I'm sorry. Good luck, buddy." I thanked him, but I knew all I could expect was more humiliation. So it had already started, the gossip, the whispers, the looks. Just as Samantha had warned me the night before when she called to tell me Brad was bragging at the club. I spent the whole day without leaving the house. I think I was hiding, although it pained me to admit it. There were sports programs on TV, but I didn't pay attention. My thoughts kept returning to my marriage to Emily. Where did it all go wrong? At what point did she stop loving me? We had seemed so happy in Sunset Cliffs. We had good jobs, a nice house, and were even talking about having children. But thinking back, I began to realize that things had really slowed down over the past 6 months, although I didn't notice it at the time. I also remembered that Emily seemed a little distracted at times, as if she was in another world. Obviously, I was wrong about everything. I mentally kicked myself. How could I be so blind as to not realize that she was involved with someone else? How could I not understand that she fell out of love with me and fell in love with Brad Harrison? The only thing I could figure out was that when you love and trust someone, you don't look for signs of betrayal and deceit, I thought sardonically. No, I thought you'll just have to wait until they hit you over the head. On Monday, I went to work early so I could arrive before it started. Around 9 o'clock, I called my lawyer's office to make an appointment. When the secretary asked about the purpose of the meeting, I didn't want to get into the subject of Emily and me, so I told her that I needed to make some changes to my will. When she came back online, she told me I could come right after lunch. When I got to the law office, Jonathan met me in the lobby. He was our classmate back in our student days, and when Emily and I decided to make wills, I went to him. After we sat down in his office, he looked at me with concern. "Is everything okay, Jason? I understand that you need to change your will. Are either you or Emily sick?" "Thanks for your concern, Jonathan, but it's not that bad," I told him. I then handed him the papers that Emily had given me on Saturday. As he read them, he clicked his tongue to himself. When he finished, he looked at me. "I'm really sorry to hear about this, Jason. Do you think there is a chance for reconciliation?" "I don't think so. She has already moved out of our house and moved in with her boyfriend. She said they plan to get married as soon as our divorce is final." He shook his head. "I never expected this. You two seemed like the perfect couple." Then his expression changed and his voice took on a professional tone. "Given these circumstances, I advise you as your legal advisor to sign this agreement immediately." "Just erase 10 years of marriage like that?" I said bitterly. He shook his head patiently. "In matters like these, Jason, you have to stop thinking with your heart and start thinking with your head. I think Emily made you a very generous offer, much better than what you would have received if you decided to fight against it. Part of her motivation may be guilt, but I'm willing to bet the main reason is to give you an incentive to agree quickly so she can marry her new man. While it may seem like you're giving in to her now, the truth is if your marriage ends, that's the best you can hope for." I knew he was right. Hell, after what she did, I still didn't want to stay married to her, and yet it felt like she and Brad had beaten me at a game I didn't even know I was playing. Jonathan's tone became sympathetic again. "Listen, Jason, I know the lawyer that Emily hired. If you sign, we can file this settlement agreement with the court very quickly. This will reinforce what she is offering. Well then, if she decides she made a mistake and wants to go back, and if you're ready to take her back, you'll have another 30 days to back out of the divorce." "Can I borrow your pen?" I asked. Returning to the office, I headed straight to the HR department. I needed to make a lot of changes to my health insurance, my retirement savings plan, and a lot of other spousal benefits. The clerk who helped me must have done this often because he was able to fill out all the forms I needed in a short time. As I was signing them, I looked at him and saw that he was looking at me. "I guess now I won't need to make an announcement in the office," I thought ironically. On my way home that evening, I stopped at a nearby restaurant and picked up dinner. When I returned home, I discovered that Emily had been there that afternoon and had packed everything she wanted. Of course, all of her makeup was gone, but I was surprised to find that some items of clothing remained. However, when I examined them more closely, I realized that they were items that she no longer wore. "I think I can donate them to Goodwill," I thought grimly. Further investigation revealed that the bedroom was not the only place she had raided. Our good china was gone, along with most of the tableware we received as wedding gifts. Also taken from the kitchen, I noticed, were some utensils and our set of good carving knives. Several pieces of furniture were missing, and when I entered the living room, I saw that most of our CD and DVD collection was also missing. While looking through our things, I noticed that she had left our wedding album untouched. For some reason, this depressed me more than everything she took with her. It was as if she wanted to erase all memories of her life with me. I returned to the kitchen and put the food I had bought in the refrigerator. After discovering her intrusion, I had no appetite left. I made a mental note to change the locks. Damn it, how can you go from a happy marriage to a lonely divorced man in 3 days? I asked myself. It all seems so damn unfair. I spent the next week in virtual isolation, coming to work early and leaving late every day. Otherwise, I would have been left alone in the house. The humiliation of having Brad Harrison steal my wife was excruciating, and the fact that I could do nothing about it was almost unbearable. I admit that I had fantasies about attacks with a baseball bat or brass knuckles, and sometimes I dreamed of hitmen and bombs and car accidents. But then I returned to the real world. Am I really going to ruin my life just to get revenge on a skirt-chasing creep and a wife who can't keep her legs together? By Friday, I decided it was time to come out of the cocoon. I didn't do anything wrong, and I had no reason to hide that I called Samantha. Hey partner, do we have a tennis match scheduled for this weekend? I asked, trying to sound upbeat and positive. Oh, Jason, I'm so glad to hear from you, she said quickly. I thought about calling you many times, but I decided that maybe you'd prefer to be alone for a while. Thank you, Samantha, I replied, softening my tone. It was a hard week. I continued to tell her everything that happened, then asked what was going on at Sunset Cliffs that I had missed. She spoke evasively and vaguely for a few seconds before admitting that our situation had become the talk of the section. You'd think they wouldn't have anything better to discuss, I said sharply. Maybe, Samantha admitted, but Brad and Emily aren't making it easy. Since last Saturday, they've been hanging out at the club every evening. Brad almost openly boasts that the better man won, and Emily hangs on him like a lovesick schoolgirl. I could hear the anger in her voice. That's just disgusting, Jason. I immediately quit her Pilates class and told her I couldn't be her friend anymore. Her dedication made me feel a little better. What about the others, Samantha? What are they saying? I asked. I think this is what you'd expect, Jason. There are some who are very unhappy with Brad and Emily, and they try to avoid the lovers as much as possible. There's also a group that always hangs out with Brad. They all praise his skill, if you know what I mean. But for most people, it's just a sad, awkward situation, and they try to stay away from it as much as possible. Intellectually, I knew this would happen, but part of me wanted the community to tar and feather Brad and Emily and run them out of town on a rail. But I was determined not to let disappointment hold me back. Anyway, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in hiding, I told Samantha. We have a game scheduled for Saturday, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go out on the court with my partner. I'm glad, Jason, she told me warmly. You can count on me. I deliberately arrived at the tennis courts a little late so as not to get drawn into discussions I didn't want to have. This didn't help much. As I approached the tennis pavilion, I felt the eyes of my neighbors and teammates on me. I could understand their curiosity, but I still hated the feeling. Seeing me, the captain of our mixed doubles team ran up to me. Jason, I'm so sorry. The second team changed their lineup at the last second, and some matches have already started, so I can't change anything. If you don't want to play, I understand. What are you talking about, Mary? I don't understand. This is Brad, she said. You and Samantha must play against Brad and his partner. I looked across the court, and there was Brad Harrison with Emily as his partner. They were both grinning at me. You've got to be kidding, I said. I'm really sorry, Jason. Do you want me to forfeit the match? I looked at Samantha. She was staring at Emily with an expression I had never seen before. What do you think, Samantha? She turned to me with fire in her eyes. Let's beat the hell out of them. The match was a disaster. Not because we lost, we actually won in straight sets. The disaster was that I had to watch Brad and Emily touching each other between points, celebrating their good shots and acting like newlyweds. Emily wore a tennis outfit I had never seen before. Something short and tight that showed off her figure. Every time Brad made a good shot, she would run over and kiss him. But the worst part was when we were changing sides after the first set. Brad jogged over to me. "No hard feelings, right, Jason?" he said with that stupid grin of his. "I mean, you've got Samantha now. She's pretty hot herself." I wanted to punch him right there, but there were too many people watching. "Get away from me, Brad," I said quietly. "Hey man, the best player won. That's how it works in tennis, and that's how it works in life." Samantha grabbed my arm before I could respond. "Come on, Jason. Let's finish this." We won the second set even more easily than the first. I think Brad was too busy showing off for Emily to concentrate on tennis. But winning didn't make me feel any better. If anything, it made things worse because now I had to shake hands with both of them at the net. Emily barely looked at me when we shook hands. "Good game," she said mechanically. Brad squeezed my hand harder than necessary. "Nice playing with you again, Jason. We should do this more often." I wanted to tell him what he could do with his suggestions, but I just nodded and walked away. Later that week, I was having lunch with Jerry Morrison, a guy I knew from work. We were sitting in a restaurant downtown when he asked me how I was holding up. "I've been better," I told him. "Look, Jason, I know this might sound crazy, but maybe I can help you." "Of course, Jerry. I'll be happy to hear any advice you have." "Well, here's the thing. In my line of work entertaining big clients, I've heard about certain services. High-end companionship for business events and such. I've never used them personally, of course, but I know they exist." He looked at me strangely. "No, Jason, that's impossible. This is against company policy, and I would never do this." I leaned across the table towards him. "Jerry, this is not a company problem, and we are not here on business. This is strictly personal, if you know what I mean." He looked at me for a few seconds, then a light lit up in his eyes. "Oh, I understand," he said. "I think after being married for so long you're out of the dating game for a while." He stopped and leaned towards me. "Of course, I know one of the best services in the city, but listen, Jason, they only serve the biggest clients. Their girls are incredible, but I think they may be way out of your price range." I smiled at him. "Let me worry about that. Just tell me how to contact them and what to expect." And he did just that over hamburgers and beer. That day I was nervous as I reviewed the notes I had taken during lunch. I hoped I was doing the right thing. Then I remembered Brad teasing me and Emily's cold statement that she was leaving and decided to go for it. I dialed the number Jerry gave me and a pleasant male voice answered. "Hello, can I help you?" "Yes, I would like to speak with Mr. Henry Miller," I said as instructed. "This is Mr. Miller," the voice answered. "What are you looking for?" "Something regarding publications," was my answer. "Please tell me your name, sir." I considered using a pseudonym, but Jerry was very clear about the need to clearly identify myself. "They're always worried about the police prostitution department," he told me. "They'll go to great lengths to make sure you're not a cop trying to set them up." I told him my real name. "Are you calling from work?" asked Mr. Miller. "Yes," I answered, "but this is a personal matter. It has nothing to do with my company." "I understand, sir. I'll call you back in a few minutes to verify." Pretty smart, I thought to myself. A simple callback would verify I'm legitimate without being too complicated. I gave him my direct number, and he immediately hung up. A couple of minutes later, my phone rang directly. "Now that we have verified your identity," he said calmly, "please tell us how our service can help you." "I am looking for a very special companion who may be available for a series of events that may stretch over a month or more," I said. Said the voice. "That's a little unusual. As a rule, we do not make commitments for such a long period of time. We may be able to help you, but it will be expensive." He told me a price that made my eyes water. I hesitated for a moment, doing quick math in my head. It would basically wipe out my savings. That's expensive. But if it works, it'll be worth it." "Yes, that's acceptable." "Okay, do you have any special requirements?" "Yes," I said. "She should look like a goddess." He chuckled. "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, sir, but I think we can find a companion that suits your needs." He paused. Do you have a pen at hand? When I assured him that I did, he gave me their website address. I noticed that the URL started with HTTPS, which indicates a secure server. When I finished, to my surprise, he said, "When prompted for username, you should enter NAN." He then gave me a digital password. Please understand, sir, that both your username and password will change immediately after you make your selection. This is done for both our safety and your own. When I confirmed my understanding, he continued, "Now regarding the payment, sir. Once you have made your selection and the girl has been assigned to meet you, your credit card will be charged the amount you just agreed to. Additionally, our clients are expected to show their appreciation directly to their female companions. If you're satisfied with everything, we recommend a 25% tip." I did some quick math in my head. This better work, I thought, otherwise I will go broke and remain humiliated. Very good, sir. When you are ready to make your choice, go to our website. You can do everything else there. Good afternoon, sir. After that, the line was cut off. I waited until I got home that evening to access the website Henry gave me. The main screen was labeled Capricorn Services, with the slogan, "Satisfying the needs of the most discerning customers." The username and password provided by Henry led me to the site, and a window opened that could have come straight from the pages of a Victoria's Secret catalog. All the women featured there were so gorgeous that I wondered why they weren't modeling instead of being escorts. In fact, I even wondered if the images might have been copied from some modeling agency site as part of some kind of bait and switch. But my friend Jerry insisted that Capricorn was real, so I decided to take a chance. I assumed I'd target a blonde, but a photo of a woman with shoulder-length dark hair caught my eye and I impulsively clicked. The confirmation message that appeared on my screen assured me that Victoria would contact me within 24 hours to arrange our meeting. I was then asked to enter my credit card details. After the card number and expiration date were verified, the screen went black and I was suddenly logged out of the site. Out of curiosity, I tried to return to the Capricorn site, but this time the welcome screen did not recognize the username and password. After the second attempt, I was redirected to my homepage. I was very impressed with the security their system provided and thought this was an encouraging sign. If they go to such great lengths, perhaps their service was as good as Jerry indicated. The next day, I sat on pins and needles and waited for Victoria's call. At some point, I even thought about backing out. The implementation of my little plan was expected to be very expensive, and there was no guarantee of success. But when I went into the break room to pour myself a cup of coffee, the two secretaries who were chatting there immediately fell silent upon my appearance and turned away from me. It didn't take a genius to figure out who they were talking about. The pain of being the subject of office gossip strengthened my resolve. Whatever happened, I wasn't going to continue being a helpless victim if I could do anything about it. Just after dinner, my mobile phone rang. When I answered, a melodious voice said, "Hello, Jason. This is Victoria. I'm looking forward to meeting you." I swallowed and then responded by suggesting that we meet for dinner to discuss my request. When she agreed, I suggested the same restaurant Jerry and I had eaten at. It was small, dark, and far enough from Sunset Cliffs that I was unlikely to run into any of my neighbors. She laughed. "How interesting. I don't think I've ever had dinner there before. I'm looking forward to meeting you." With that, she hung up. "Let's go," I thought. The restaurant wasn't very busy during the week, which was one of the reasons I chose it. The low lighting also suited my purposes, but when she walked through the door, it was like a spotlight illuminated her. She saw me nervously, stood up, came over, and confidently shook my hand. "Hello, Jason," she said in a musical voice. "It's nice to meet you in person." She sat down and I followed suit. I must have stared at her because she laughed and said, "Well, what do I look like? We've all seen movie stars on screen or models in magazines. But meeting someone like that in person was stunning." I found myself staring in silent admiration. She smiled and broke the silence. "I take it to mean approval," she said. "Oh yeah," I stammered. "I just for a moment, I mean." My voice trailed off with embarrassment. Luckily, at that moment, the waitress came over to take our orders. I don't even remember what I ordered, but Victoria decided on a green salad with dressing. As the waitress wrote down her choices, I could tell that she too had fallen under Victoria's spell. She continued to glance at her until she finally burst out, "Aren't you an actress?" Victoria smiled sweetly at her. "No, I'm afraid not," she said, and the waitress walked away muttering to herself. Their little exchange allowed the rational part of my brain to come back online. I looked at Victoria curiously. "I bet this happens to you often." She nodded unconsciously. "Yes, this happens quite often. May I ask you a question? Why don't you act on television or work in the modeling business and well, you know?" I asked, stuttering slightly at the end. "I considered it," she admitted, "but it's a very competitive world. I may look good to you, but I'm just one of many in that industry. The chances of making it there are about the same as a basketball player getting into the NBA. But in my field I stand out, and unlike a model or actress, I didn't have to go hungry for years paying my dues. I made a lot of money from the very beginning. By the time my appearance begins to fade, I will have saved enough to live off my investments for the rest of my life. And if I'm really lucky, I'll find a rich man who wants a trophy wife and won't care what she used to do for a living." Couldn't help but nod. I didn't agree with her chosen career path, but she definitely approached it wisely. At that moment, the waitress brought our order. Having served Victoria, she looked at her again and said, "Are you sure you're not on TV?" "I'm just sure I've seen you before." Victoria shook her head. "I don't think so. If I had been there, I'm sure I would have remembered it." I tried to suppress my laughter as the waitress hurried away. When we started eating, she looked at me carefully. "So Jason, why don't you give me an idea of what you mean?" Henry said this was something unusual. I blushed and started telling her my story. When I replayed my conversation with Emily after I caught her in bed with Brad, Victoria looked at me with sympathy. "That was pretty insensitive," she said. And when I described Brad Harrison and his behavior, she nodded understandingly. "I've met a lot of men of his type." She wiped her mouth gracefully and then folded her hands on the table. "So what exactly do you want to do, and how do I fit into your plan?" I spent the next 15 minutes describing what I hoped to achieve over the next month or so. When I finished, I admitted that I had serious doubts about what I was trying to do. But I just can't sit back and resist and fold my arms and let both of them ignore me. And now that I've met you, I'm starting to think this might work. She smiled widely. "What a wonderful compliment," she said. She then leaned forward across the table. "You know, I think I'll like it," she said enthusiastically and extended her hand to shake mine to seal the deal. She laughed and shook it tightly. "Accomplice," she said with a sly smile. Then she sat down and did something to her posture that I didn't quite catch and suddenly started radiating raw sensuality. I felt excitement. "Well," she said in a low, sultry voice, "now that we have completed the business portion of our meeting, can we take it somewhere more comfortable to relax?" My mouth suddenly went dry and I had to take a sip of water before I could speak. "No," I said. "Tonight should just be business." She gave me a knowing smile. "You don't find me attractive?" "Oh, hell no," I muttered. Yes, it's not like that. I'm just trying to focus on what we're planning to do, and it would be better for me not to get involved with you like this. Don't you understand? But I have a bonus for you." With these words, I handed her an envelope across the table. I had put several large bills there in advance. She accepted it solemnly and it disappeared into her purse. Then she changed her position again and her sensual aura seemed to recede. "I think maybe I understand Jason." She tilted her head slightly to look at me. "You're a very interesting man. I think I'll enjoy our little adventure together." With these words, she got up and left, and I remained sitting in the restaurant. For some reason, I felt squeezed like a lemon. What a woman, I thought. We planned for stage 1 of Operation Honey Trap to begin on Saturday. Shortly after lunchtime, temperatures were already rising in San Diego, and I thought there would be a large crowd at the pool at Sunset Cliffs. I was a little worried if Victoria would show up, but shortly after noon, a BMW Z4 pulled into my driveway. She came to my door with a small bag, and when I raised my eyebrows, she said, My swimsuit. She looked around and smiled. So this is suburbia. Do you like it here? I frowned. Until recently, yes. She patted my cheek. We'll fix everything. We split up at the club to go to the locker rooms and change into our swimsuits. As we agreed, I went out first and found two sun loungers near a table with an umbrella. Before I could get comfortable, I noticed Big Brad Harrison approaching me. Well, Jason, he boomed. I'm surprised to see you at the pool today. I thought you'd learned a lesson after trying to improve your tennis game. I knew he was trying to provoke me, but I answered evenly, no today, my girlfriend, and I want to enjoy the pool and some sun. But Brad wasn't going to let me off that easily. Oh, you already have a girlfriend? I'd like to meet her. By now, our conversation had attracted the attention of people nearby. Well, you're in luck, Brad. Here she is, I said, pointing to the door of the women's locker room. My God. When Victoria approached us, there was silence among the club members. I expected her to be in a bikini, but to my surprise, she was wearing a one-piece swimsuit. Somehow it was much more attractive. It was made of a silvery material that caught and reflected sunlight, attracting the attention of every man and woman in sight. I heard clicks and realized she was wearing stilettos. They made her calves, thighs, and figure look amazing. As she approached us, I looked from her legs to her suit. It somehow looked different, and then I realized it must be made of the thinnest material I had ever seen. It completely followed every contour of her body, and when I looked closer it became obvious that the suit was completely unlined. It looked like it was just painted on her body. She came up to me, took my hand, pressed her chest against my bicep, and kissed my cheek. Oh, it's so nice, honey, she said. You got a seat for us. Then she turned to Brad. Is this your friend Jason? I looked at Brad and saw to my delight that his mouth was open as he looked at the vision before him. Victoria, I said, I want you to meet Brad. Brad closed his mouth and quickly extended his hand to shake hers. Welcome to Sunset Cliffs, he said rather grandly. If I can help with anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Victoria smiled sweetly. Oh, how sweet. She turned to me and shyly asked, Is everyone here as nice as Brad? I dryly answered, No, Brad is unique. She smiled at him again. Well, thank you very much for making me feel at home. When he remained standing, she looked down with a smile. Now you can let go of my hand. He said embarrassedly, Well, I have to go. I hope I see you again, Victoria. I hope I see you again. With these words, he awkwardly turned away and returned to the other side of the pool, repeatedly looking over his shoulder along the way. I looked in that direction and saw Emily sitting with her arms crossed. She didn't look happy. Victoria and I settled back into our sun loungers. She took my hand and pulled me closer to whisper in my ear, I think everything went well. I squeezed her hand. You were perfect, I assured her. She smiled and quickly kissed me on the lips. I knew she meant it as a friendly kiss, but 15 minutes later I could still feel her lips on mine. She then stretched out face down on the lounge chair. Would you like to put some suntan lotion on me, Jason? When I happily complied, I was sure I heard men sigh nearby. Over the next few hours, it seemed like everyone who was at the pool that day decided to walk past us to see my new girlfriend. I know for sure that everyone from my men's team passed by, and after exchanging a few cheerful words, I decided to introduce them to Victoria. She was kind to everyone, chatting easily as if they were her old friends. At some point, I leaned over and whispered in her ear, You should have gone into politics. She just smiled and winked at me. I'm just one step away from that job. I burst out laughing. When everything calmed down, she leaned towards me again. Who is she? I knew exactly who she meant and pointed her to Emily on the other side of the pool. Okay, she said. Leave it to me. She put on her high heels and walked towards Emily's side of the pool. Bent at the waist and facing the pool, she took off her shoes and then gracefully dove into the shallow water. As she surfaced, she tilted her head forward and then quickly threw it back so that her hair formed a graceful arc above her head, fanning water into the air. I was delighted. I had seen this move in commercials before, but never in real life. It was amazing. Then, in one motion, Victoria gracefully climbed out of the water onto the deck. As she stood facing Emily, water flowing down her body, she reached up to push her hair back, highlighting her figure. Then she put her shoes back on, adding about 4 inches to her height, and returned to where I was watching. Reluctantly looking away from Victoria, I looked at Emily. She looked at me angrily, then turned and spoke sharply to Brad before grabbing her things and heading towards the exit. He followed her, looking over his shoulder again at Victoria. She gracefully settled into her chair with her eyes closed. I could only hear her muttering, "Mission accomplished." While we were there, one unpleasant event happened. As we were about to leave, I looked up and saw Samantha walking in my direction. Oh crap, I thought. I completely forgot about the girls' team playing today. What will I tell her? Hello, Jason. I'm so glad to see you again. Maybe we can get together and play some more. She stopped abruptly as Victoria stood up and grabbed my hand. Oh, Samantha said in surprise. Who is this? This is Victoria, my girlfriend, I said awkwardly. Samantha blinked and looked at Victoria silently for a moment, then she extended her hand. I'm Samantha, she said. Nice to meet you. She turned to me. I need to get cleaned up. I'm pretty dirty after our match today. See you, Jason. Then she turned and hurried away before I could think of anything to say. Who was that? Victoria asked curiously. That was Samantha Clark, I told her. She is my partner in mixed doubles. Interesting, was her answer. That I mentally kicked myself for not planning ahead on what to do with Samantha. I didn't want to risk revealing my plan to her, but I also didn't want Samantha to get the wrong idea. Crap. Soon after, Victoria and I decided to call it a day. I felt like we had done everything we wanted to today. I swear, when we left the pool, the level of conversation increased significantly. When we got back to my house, I let Victoria take a shower while I dried myself off and thought about the day. With the exception of my unexpected meeting with Samantha, everything went even better than I could have hoped. I showed Emily that I was not going to spend the rest of my life quietly mourning her desertion. Moreover, I showed her that not only was she replaceable, but I had actually improved my situation quite a lot. Let her suffer a little, I thought triumphantly. So how do you think it went? I heard a voice behind me. I turned to see Victoria wrapped in a bath towel. You were perfect, I answered enthusiastically. You were everything I hoped for and more. She did something with her fingers and suddenly the towel slipped away. Don't you want to celebrate? She asked softly. I stood there for a while, unable to breathe. Everything about her was absolutely perfect. I gasped and realized that I had not been breathing. Gathering my strength, I walked up to her, bent down, and handed her the towel. I'm so sorry, Victoria. It's just not the time, I said. Sure, okay. I was just checking, she said. She wrapped the towel over her shoulders and walked away from me. Oh my God, I thought. I've never seen anyone like her. When she returned, she was dressed and her bag was packed. I handed her a sealed envelope. Thank you, I said warmly. Today was exactly what I wanted. She tilted her head again in that charming way and looked at me. Do you want to go back to Emily? She suddenly asked. I shuddered. No, I said furiously. This was not a one-time bad decision or loss of control. She deliberately threw me away like some kind of trash that she no longer needed. I will never go back to her under any circumstances. That's what I thought, she said. But I was just wondering. Anyway, are we still meeting next week? Oh, of course, I said with a big smile. During the week, I decided to go to the club for tennis practice. I wanted everyone to know that I was tired of hiding. I'm glad you came back and stopped being discouraged, the captain of our men's team told me. My team members greeted me with back slaps and wide winks. Behind me, I heard someone say, "Lucky son of a..." I smiled, knowing what impression Victoria could make. A couple of days later, I returned to the mixed doubles practice courts, but Samantha was nowhere to be found. Our captain told me that she had called and said she was sick. When I returned home after practice, I immediately called her. Are you okay, Samantha? I asked. It doesn't sound like you're sick. Oh, nothing serious, probably just a minor bug, she said sharply. Should I bring you something? I asked cheerfully. No, she replied tersely. Thanks, but I don't really need anything. Anyway, it's better if you stay away. I don't want you to get infected by me. Okay, I said hesitantly, but if you get worse, call me right away. I'm worried about you. She made a vague promise and then said she needed to rest, so I hung up. I didn't like it. Samantha was always so healthy and cheerful that I worried something was seriously wrong with her. Our little run-in by the pool last Saturday probably didn't help anything, I thought. I still felt like I couldn't tell her about my honey trap for fear of messing it up, but I just didn't want Samantha to get the wrong impression. I hope when this is all over she'll forgive me, I thought. The pool plan had been a success, but it was only the first stage. Victoria and I had discussed the next phase, a more public event where we could really twist the knife. The club's upcoming dinner party would be perfect. It was time to turn up the heat. The dinner party at the club was scheduled for the following weekend. Victoria and I had planned this as the next stage of our operation. A more sophisticated approach where she could work her magic on both Emily and Brad in a social setting. When she arrived at my house, she was dressed completely differently than last time. Wow, you look like you just stepped out of the pages of a fashion magazine, I said, looking at her. She was wearing casual clothes consisting of a skirt, a casual jacket, and a blouse, but while it sounded conventional, the fabric, styling, and accessories all screamed high fashion. She curtsied like a little girl. Thank you, dear sir. Actually, I just picked this up at Nordstrom, she said, but don't worry if the labels don't mean anything to you. Today, my main target is the ladies, and one lady in particular. Well, I can't speak for women, but I think you'll still have a significant influence on their husbands, I told her sincerely. As we pulled into the parking lot in front of the clubhouse, Victoria turned to me and said, Tonight we need to change our tactics slightly. We should split up and talk to people. This will allow me to do what I need to do. Sounds good, I told her. When we walked out onto the patio where dinner was taking place, I immediately realized that we were both right. Once again, most of the men simply stared openly at Victoria as she passed by. The wives were a little more discreet, but I heard more than one comment about Victoria's outfit that evening. Some of the braver women asked her where she bought her clothes, and soon Victoria was happily trading shopping tips with them. After talking a bit, she and I got back together to eat. Successful? I asked her quietly. Oh, I've been very busy, she said seriously. I've learned so much about what wives think about the situation with you, Emily and Brad. More importantly, I'm making your ex's life miserable. I also flirted quite a bit with her fiancé, and she didn't like it at all. I just grinned. It was obvious that Victoria knew exactly which buttons to push. I was chatting with one of my teammates when Emily walked by and beckoned me over. Out of curiosity, I followed her to find out what she wanted. When she turned to face me, I saw that her face was red with anger. Well, it looks like you didn't waste any time getting back into the dating scene, she said irritably. I didn't know there was a mandatory waiting period, I said sarcastically. Yes, it seems to me that you're completely out of your league, Jason. Where the hell did you find her? I never met her when we were married. I met her through work, I said evenly. Well, if I were you, I'd be more careful. She seems like more than you can handle. Couldn't resist. That's where you're wrong, Emily. I satisfy her at every opportunity. Is that so? She said sharply. In that case, you better keep her away from Brad. With those words, she rushed away. I smiled to myself. Everything was going exactly as I had hoped. At that moment, I noticed Samantha carrying a tray of food. I knew she was on the entertainment committee, but I didn't know if she was well enough to come tonight. I ran up and grabbed her hand. She blushed when she saw me. I'm so glad you're feeling better, I told her. You should have called me and told me you were well enough to come tonight. I guess I wasn't sure until the last minute, Jason. Besides, I figured you'd be here with your new girlfriend and didn't want to bother you. At that moment, Victoria walked by talking to one of my teammates, confirming Samantha's assumption. She frowned. She was about to move on, but I grabbed her hand again. Wait, Samantha. We need to talk about our next match, I said. She hesitated and then apparently made a decision. Jason, things have been really tight for me lately, and well, I've decided to give up mixed doubles and focus on the women's team. I was shocked. You can't do this, Samantha, I blurted out. You're my partner. Who will I find to play with? Samantha looked over my shoulder, and when I looked back I saw Victoria standing there. You'll find someone, Jason, Samantha said. Now please let me go. I need to deliver this food. When I let go of her hand, she rushed away. Victoria took my hand and walked with me to an empty table. When we sat down, she leaned over and whispered, "Just so you know, this girl loves you." What? No, that's crazy. She's my tennis partner, I said. She took a Pilates class with Emily and, if I'm not mistaken, Victoria continued, ignoring me, you're a little in love with her too. No, I objected. It's not true. She's just a good friend. Maybe, she said skeptically. Anyway, I think we've done all we can for this evening, so let's get out of here. Back at my house, I asked Victoria about what happened with Emily and Brad. She smiled smugly. I went to where they had placed the food and complimented Emily on her choices. She clearly didn't appreciate my presence, but she couldn't say anything. Then I told her how much I liked her outfit, and she was forced to return the compliment. I saw that she recognized the designer and realized how much it must have cost. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were almost green with envy. That sounds like Emily, I said, shaking my head. Definitely fashion conscious and proud of her sense of style. It was at this point, Victoria continued, that one of the ladies asked Emily to help in the kitchen. Although she didn't want to, she had to leave me alone with Brad. As she said this, Victoria was demonstrating what she was doing. She leaned forward suggestively and smiled at me in a way that made my pulse quicken. As soon as I caught Brad's attention, I started flirting with him seriously. I asked him if he played football, which gave him a chance to show off a little. While he was doing this, I reached out and touched his chest. I commented on how much bigger he was than you and said I like big men. Wow, I said. No wonder Emily was so hostile. I'm doing the best I can, she said with obvious false modesty. I can't believe Brad actually believed you were interested in him, I added. She laughed loudly. Guys like Brad are so self-confident that it would never occur to them to doubt a woman's interest in them. The ironic thing is that they are usually disappointing companions. I had to smile at that. If what Victoria said was true, it would serve Emily right. I handed her an envelope. Do you think we're ready for the next stage? Definitely. Dancing at your club will be perfect for what we have planned. Then she turned and headed towards the front door. What, no attempt at seduction tonight? I asked her with a smile. She smiled at me over her shoulder. I didn't think so. Then she turned and gave a slight sway of her hips, which sent a jolt through me. After she left, I opened a can of beer and sat down to think about what was happening. On one hand, I was very pleased with how well the honey trap was working. Even though Emily didn't want me anymore, I knew she was less than happy with how quickly I had found someone to replace her, and even more upset that her replacement was much more attractive than she was. It was all really gratifying. But I couldn't help but feel sad about Samantha's situation. Could Victoria be right? Was I interested? Could I really have feelings for Samantha? I liked her from the first time Emily introduced us, plus I found her attractive, slim, athletic, and graceful with a charming and friendly personality. But because of Emily, I always tried to keep our relationship strictly friendly within the framework of our tennis partnership, and I was sure that Samantha wanted the same thing, especially when she was dealing with the loss of her husband. I thought about what Victoria had said about Samantha. This couldn't be true, could it? If Samantha was interested in me, why was she avoiding me like the plague? And why did this bother me so much? For that matter, why did I repeatedly turn down the most beautiful woman I had probably ever met in my life? Could my feelings for Samantha be a part of this? Finally, I gave up and went to bed. I didn't know the answers to my questions, and even if I did, I still didn't know what to do with them. I decided that the best thing for me to do was to continue moving forward while focusing on the plan I had initiated. The club's monthly dance was a popular event that always drew large crowds. Ladies used dancing as an excuse to wear new clothes and men reluctantly put on their sport coats. Some even wore ties. I was counting on Brad and Emily showing up. I told Victoria what to expect, and I was curious to see what she would wear for the culmination of our plan. So I was surprised and disappointed to see her get out of the car wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Admittedly, these were the tightest jeans I'd ever seen on a woman, and the t-shirt hugged her figure perfectly without a bra, but still I expected something different. My face must have given me away because she touched it as she brushed past. "You didn't think that I would risk wrinkling my dress on the road, did you? Just let me use your bedroom for a while, and then I'll be ready to go." I had already put on my sport jacket and dress pants, so I waited around impatiently while she got dressed. "Damn," I chuckled to myself. "We're almost like an old married couple." A few minutes later, I heard her voice. "Jason, can you come here? I need your help." I returned and opened the door to the bedroom. Oh my God! There stood Victoria ready for the evening. She was wearing elegant undergarments and stockings that clearly showed her professional approach to every detail. She turned to face me. "Will it work?" she asked with a slight smile. I couldn't help myself. I took a step towards her, but she stopped me with a smile and a raised hand. "No, not now. I can't let you ruin everything. So now that I see your approval, get out of here and let me put on my dress." I think I staggered back to my room. A few minutes later, she came out wearing a stunning strapless dress in a cream color that complemented her hair perfectly. As she walked, I realized that the dress must have been carefully chosen because it created exactly the effect she wanted. Elegant, sophisticated, and impossible to ignore. I swallowed hard. "I think you're going to cause quite a stir tonight," I told her. She smiled quietly at me and extended her hand so that I could escort her. For dancing, the club cleared out the patio and hung paper lanterns. It was a little festive, but I found myself enjoying the effect of the soft lights and music. Victoria slipped into my arms to dance, and I was not surprised to find that she was a much better dancer than I was. As we moved together, she laid her head on my shoulder, and at that moment I decided that I didn't care that she was working. I just enjoyed the feeling of her body against mine and the pleasure of her company. She raised her head and pulled back far enough to look at me. "You know, this life isn't so bad. A girl could get used to it." Before I could answer, she tensed up. "Oh, stay in position." I turned just in time to see Brad Harrison heading our way, dragging a visibly struggling Emily behind him. "Hello, Victoria," he boomed. "Hi, Jason. I'm so glad you decided to join us tonight. How about switching partners for a dance or two?" When I agreed, he pulled Victoria away from me, leaving a clearly uncomfortable Emily standing next to me. I extended my hand to her. "Would you like to dance for old time's sake?" She reluctantly agreed, and when the new song started playing, I began dancing with her. It was an interesting experience. I had loved this woman and was married to her for 10 years. However, after what happened, all I had left was a strong desire to make her feel what she did to me. "So was our marriage really that bad?" I asked. She sighed. "No, Jason, that's not true at all. We had good years and wonderful times, but then everything fell into a routine, and after a while I just didn't feel particularly excited about our relationship anymore. When Brad showed up and made it so obvious how much he wanted me, I just got caught up in the whole thing. I've really fallen hard for him, Jason. I fell in love just like I did back in college." She looked at me. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jason, but I had to do what was right for me. You understand." "I understand," I said bitterly. "You decided to change your shoes." "That's not what I meant," she said defensively. "It's okay," I said. "I did the same thing." She winced, remembering who I was now dating, and I felt some satisfaction. "If everything is done correctly later, it will only be better," I said, looking up to see Brad and Victoria walking towards us hand in hand. "There's your girl, Jason," Brad said with a slight grin. "Good night." Then he walked away and Emily ran after him. Victoria and I resumed dancing. "How did everything go?" I whispered in her ear. I could almost hear the smirk in her voice. "The hook is secure," she said. "He's convinced that I'm in love with him. He's going to apologize to Emily and we'll meet at the club after everyone leaves. I'm just a little nervous about this part. The timing has to be perfect. Just leave it to me," I told her. "Women know everything about such things," she said. Then she touched my ear with her tongue and I shuddered. As the evening ended, I noticed the crowd began to thin out quite quickly. I think I must have been looking around because Victoria noticed it. "Sorry, Jason," she said, "but I don't think Samantha came this evening." "Am I that transparent?" I asked. "Like glass," she answered with a slight smile. When we got back to my house, I reached into my pocket and handed Victoria another envelope. "I may not be able to give it to you later," I said, "and I want to make sure you're okay." She accepted it almost reluctantly. I noticed she looked at me for a moment and then her face changed. "This has been the most unusual assignment I have ever had," she said, "and you are unlike any client I have ever had. It was a little frustrating at times." I blushed, but I really enjoyed it all. I took both her hands in mine. Intent on revenge, I knew I needed someone with admirable qualities. I replied, "But I never expected to find someone like you, and I will never forget you." I suddenly stepped forward and kissed her. She held the kiss for a few seconds and then pulled back abruptly. She blinked quickly several times and said hastily, "Don't smudge my lipstick." Then she looked at the jeweled watch on her wrist and added, "It's almost time. We have to go. Give me exactly 30 minutes. With these words, she walked out the door, got into her car, and drove away. I stood there for a minute and then made a decision. Victoria and I had discussed contingency plans, and I was hoping this wouldn't completely mess things up, but I had to take that risk. I needed Samantha to see the truth for herself. I pulled out my cell phone and waited about 30 minutes before calling, giving Victoria time to get to the club and set things in motion. "Hello? Samantha, it's Jason. I'm going to ask you for the biggest favor of my life. Something important is happening at the club, and I really need you there. Can you meet me there in about an hour? I know it sounds crazy, but please trust me." "What's going on, Jason? What does all of this mean?" "I can't explain everything now, but it's about Emily and Brad. You'll understand when you get there. 1 hour. Please." "Jason, what's?" "I have to go. 1 hour. Please." She hung up. As I walked towards the clubhouse, I wondered if she would come. The chance was slim, but I decided it was the only one I had. When I got to the parking lot, there were 2 cars parked there. I pulled out my cell phone again and made another call. "Hello? Brad?" Emily's angry voice came over the phone. "Where are you?" "It's not Brad," I said. "It's Jason." "Jason? What do you need and why are you calling so late?" she demanded. "I'm calling because I know where Brad is. He's with Victoria." "What?" she screamed. "Where are they?" "Listen," I said. "Just meet me at the club as soon as possible." Then I hung up. Brad's house was a few blocks from the clubhouse, but Emily must have been running because I soon spotted her cutting through someone's backyard. I intercepted her before she reached the club. "Where is he?" she raged. "Quiet," I commanded, grabbing her wrist. "You have to be quiet so we can catch them." I led her to the door of the club, which was unlocked, and we tiptoed across the threshold. Entering the main room, we heard rustling and murmuring in the dim light coming through the windows. I saw Emily's eyes widen. I quickly put my hand over her mouth to keep her from making noise and then pointed to the light switch on the wall. She nodded understandingly and we tiptoed towards the sounds. At 9:30, I saw Victoria arrive. She was wearing a stunning dress that turned every head in the room. She made her way through the crowd, dancing with several different men, but always keeping one eye on the door. At 10 o'clock, Brad arrived. I could see him scanning the room looking for Victoria. When he spotted her, she gave him a smile that could have melted ice cream. She danced with him for one song, then whispered something in his ear. They both headed towards the door. I waited 15 minutes, then called Emily. "Emily, it's Jason. I need to talk to you urgently about something. Can you meet me at the club? What's this about Jason? It's late and it's about Brad. I think you need to know what's going on. There was a pause. I'll be right there. 20 minutes later, Emily's car pulled into the parking lot. I met her at the entrance. Where is he? She demanded. Who? Brad. His truck is here, but he's not answering his phone. Maybe he's inside, I suggested. We walked through the now empty clubhouse, following the sound of voices coming from one of the back rooms. The main dance had ended and most people had gone home. Brad, Emily called out. The voices stopped abruptly. I led Emily towards the sound and we found ourselves at the doorway to one of the private lounges. Through the partially open door, we could see two figures on the sofa in a compromising position. Oh my God, Emily gasped. I reached over and flipped on the light switch. What the hell? Brad tried to jump up but got tangled and fell to the floor. Victoria stood up, gracefully adjusting her dress. How could you do this to me? Emily screamed, rushing towards Brad. We were supposed to get married. Victoria clung to Brad's arm as he struggled to his feet and regain his composure. Now that he had his clothes straightened out, Brad's arrogance returned. What do you want now, baby? He asked Victoria. I just want to be with you, Victoria answered in a childlike voice, clinging to him. Brad turned to face us. Despite Emily's obvious distress, his first words were addressed to me. Well, Jason, it looks like you've lost your second woman too. I didn't say a word, but Emily screamed. What about us, Brad? What about us? Brad shrugged callously. Look, Emily, we were fine for a while, but it would never have lasted very long. Now I found someone better, and I'm going to devote all my time to her. He looked back at Victoria, then turned to Emily. You can't blame a guy for wanting to change his shoes, can you? Hearing those words, even in her pain and anger, Emily couldn't help but look at me guiltily. She recognized the cruel phrase she had used to justify leaving me. Victoria put her arms around Brad's neck and he kissed her possessively. Come on, baby, let's get out of here, he said, pulling her towards the door. Go ahead, Brad, Victoria said. I need to tell Jason something. Besides, I don't want to leave my car here. She reached into her purse and scribbled an address. I'll meet you at this place in 20 minutes. Brad looked doubtful. Are you sure everything will be okay? He asked. I'm sure, dear. Jason won't hurt me. He's not that kind of guy. Yeah, Brad grinned. I think you're right. With these words, he headed towards the door and we heard him leave. While our attention was focused on Brad, Emily had broken free from my restraining grip. She screamed and rushed at Victoria with outstretched claws. But Victoria had clearly dealt with angry women before. She calmly stepped to the side, grabbed Emily's wrist, and restrained her. I knew those self-defense lessons would come in handy, Victoria said, winking at me. As Emily continued to struggle, Victoria said sharply, If you don't calm down, I'll be forced to dislocate your shoulder. Emily stopped resisting and Victoria pushed her away, turning her to face her. Listen, Emily, there's something you should know, Victoria said. I don't care about your Neanderthal ex-fiancé, and I have absolutely no intention of joining him at that bar. Emily was stunned. But why? Why did you seduce him? Because this is my profession. I'm a paid escort. I've been with dozens of guys like Brad. They all think they're God's gift to women and are always looking for the next conquest. Do you think he loved you? The only thing he really loved was the opportunity to finally beat Jason at something. I believe he liked you, but he liked beating Jason even more. So Jason hired me to make Brad pay and at the same time show you how it feels to be cheated on. It hurts, doesn't it? After that, Emily screamed and then rushed at me, but before I could react, a familiar voice called out from the doorway. Stop it, Emily. I turned to see Samantha standing in the entrance. She had come after all, and must have followed the sound of voices to find us. Emily stumbled in surprise, and Samantha stepped forward with clenched fists. You deserve it, Emily, Samantha said. After what you did to Jason, you deserve so much worse. Emily lay silently and sobbed. It seemed to me that her feelings were more wounded than her body. Samantha turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. "Is that really true?" she asked me. "She's really not your girlfriend?" "No," I told her solemnly. "She was my partner in the honey trap we set for Brad and Emily, but nothing more." "But she's so beautiful," Samantha objected. "I could never compete with someone like her." Victoria walked over and put her hands on Samantha's shoulders. "Stupid girl. I never had a chance." "He only looked at you." Samantha looked at me again. "You mean you never even—" Victoria interrupted again. "No, Samantha, he never did. There was no way I could get him away from you long enough for him to touch me, and believe me, I gave him the opportunity." Samantha didn't say anything but looked at me with shining eyes. Victoria grinned at both of us. "I think it's time for me to get out of here. I've had more difficult tasks than this, but for some reason it tired me." At that moment, Emily rose from the floor. "What about me? Where should I go? I can't go back to Brad's house, not after what happened." Samantha looked at her thoughtfully. "I don't know what you'll do tomorrow, but you can sleep at my house tonight. I'll go with Jason." With these words, she kissed me deeply. I took her hand and decided never to let go. But something was bothering me, and I turned back to Victoria. "What about Brad? Where did you even send him?" She laughed. "That's the address of a bar way across town. I wonder how long he will sit there before he realizes that I won't come." Then the smile on her face faded and she looked at me intently. "Good luck, Jason. You are a special man and I will not forget you." She leaned towards me and kissed me tenderly. I felt Samantha squeeze my hand even tighter. Victoria then turned to Samantha and her face took on a hard expression. "Treat him right, got it? If I ever hear that you didn't, I'll come back, and this time I won't take no for an answer." The fierce expression left her face, replaced by a look that I later realized was sadness. She reached out and patted my cheek. "But I don't think I'll be so lucky." She then reached into her purse and pressed something into my hand. "Goodbye," she said, and then turned and walked out the door, swaying her hips beautifully. I looked at my hand. It contained 4 unopened envelopes, the payments I had given her throughout our arrangement. She had returned my money. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.